I was dating somebody once early on when I had just discovered parts work. I see my parts as animals. Generally, I'm like a cat. Independent, clear, not too attached to the outcome. But when I started dating this person, I suddenly felt like a dog. I reached out more often than I wanted to. I felt dependent on their responses. I neglected my boundaries. I wasn't quite like myself, and yet I couldn't quite stop. The dog was a part of me, not all of me, a part. A part that had a history and a reason for existing. Have you ever reacted in a way that just didn't feel like you? Have you ever felt completely overwhelmed by an emotion that seemed bigger than the moment it appeared in? Have you ever stayed in a situation you knew wasn't good for you and couldn't make yourself leave? Welcome to Trauma Demystified. I'm Natalie Jovanich, a trauma counselor and complex trauma coach with lived experience in trauma recovery. If any of this sounds familiar, this episode is for you. Parts are exactly what they sound like, aspects of us, roles we took on, the peacemaker, the caregiver, the scapegoat, emotions that show up bigger than the moment, the angry part, the ashamed part, younger versions of ourselves still carrying what happened to them, patterns that run without our permission. I use parts work in various ways in my own recovery. Becoming a caring adult for my wounded inner child, connecting with my wise part, working with a part that shut down in conflict, working with a part that was scared of relationships. In the work with my clients, we use parts work to heal relational wounds, establish healthy boundaries, and work with attachment styles. Parts work sounds strange in the beginning. It did for me initially. For some people, parts come naturally, for others they don't. We can all learn to connect with them. The first step is learning to notice when a part is activated. And instead of being overwhelmed by it, get curious about it. Then we build a relationship with it. Not to be controlled by it, but to understand what it's protecting you from. Parts work found me after I did my first systemic constellation. I asked how I could deepen the healing, and she replied, "Heal your inner child." I had no clue what she was talking about. I bought a book, found a coach, started there. Parts work worked well for me in my own recovery, and I've seen it useful for many clients. If it doesn't work for you, that's not a failure. Maybe it clicks one day, maybe it doesn't. If clients don't resonate with it, I either use somatic approaches or EMDR adapted for childhood trauma. Many parts have a protective function. They developed because something was required of you to survive, to stay connected to caregivers, to manage what was unmanageable alone. There aren't signs that you're broken. They're just what they carry. And parts aren't only about wounds. Some parts help us live fully. The wise part that holds the accumulated learning of your life, the intuitive part, the resilient part. The more we can be in relationship with all of our parts, the more we are actually in charge. The part that finds excuses for other people's toxic behavior steps down, and you can assert your boundary. The part that consistently overworks feels heard, and you find a better balance. The part that feels anxious all the time feels safer and protected by you. Everybody experiences their parts differently. Animals come easily to me. Some people get images, colors, shapes. Whatever you see, feel, or hear, that's yours. There's no wrong way. I want to share a moment from a coaching session that changed something fundamental for me. I was trying to solve an inner conflict I couldn't logic my way out. I wanted closeness and kept sabotaging it. My coach suggested I talk to the parts involved. My independent part showed up as a galloping horse, courageous, unstoppable. I liked it. Then there was another part, a part that wanted to be nice and always ended up pleasing too much. I had spent a year trying to find something useful in it, and I couldn't. To me, it was a gray mouse, worthless. The reason I stayed too long in relationships that weren't good for me. I didn't just dislike the part, I hated it. My coach asked me to connect to it anyway, and what I found stopped me completely. It was sad. It didn't feel seen by me. It felt guilty. And underneath all of that, it just wanted to love somebody and be loved. It had learned to please because that was the only way it knew how to connect. I felt a rush of genuine care I hadn't expected. The part wasn't the problem. It was a child who had only ever known difficult relationships, doing the best it could with what it had. That was the moment I understood. Healing isn't about getting rid of parts you hate. It's about understanding why they exist and finding your way to genuine care. Parts work matters for childhood trauma specifically because childhood trauma doesn't only live in your thoughts. It lives in the body and the fragments of our inner world. Talk therapy reaches your mind. Parts work reaches both. The first step to get started is simple. I'm not saying everything is. Instead of I'm angry, a part of me is angry. That gap between you and the part is where curiosity becomes possible. When you stop being overwhelmed and starting being able to get curious. That's where healing actually begins. Charles Whitfield introduced me to the concept of the real self, the part of us that can tolerate complexity without being overwhelmed by it. When connected to it, we can be loving and know how to protect our boundaries, vulnerable and know when to step back. Part of my recovery was keeping that in mind as a direction to move toward, while healing the wounded parts and working with the protective ones. That said, it's not always safe to be in your real self, especially if you are in a toxic relationship or targeted by oppression. All of your parts are welcome, whether you appreciate them or detest them. Some parts' behaviors are socially judged, hard to look at. The more we exclude them, the more likely they are to control our lives. They often have a valid reason for what they do. They just sometimes express it in ways that are painful or hard to admit. What parts do you notice in yourself? What is your relationship with them? I want to leave you with a moment that has stayed with me. I was sitting in a wooden box in my new apartment in Spain. I had just moved, left everything familiar behind, started again in a country where my father couldn't find me. I sat there and massaged my shoulders. I felt small and young and tired. And then underneath all of that, I felt something I had never felt before in my life. Safe. Tears started running down my face, and then a small voice inside me spoke. My inner child. It said, "Finally, you kept your promise. You have kept me waiting for such a long time." I had made myself that promise as a child, to one day be free, to one day be safe. And for years I had put everyone else's needs before my own. The relationships I stayed in too long, the people I tried to save instead of saving myself. I answered silently, "I'm sorry I waited so long. I'm glad I finally did it." That's what parts work can lead to. Not a dramatic transformation. A moment on a wooden box, tears running down your face, a voice inside you finally feeling heard. I'll drop some links in the description if you want to learn more.